but making sure that they're trained in your systems, that they are trained in your processes, your way of doing business, and not deviating from that. Not, okay, well, we bought this guy in, he's, 3 days into his training, but man, this project is off the rails right now, so we've got to just throw him into the mix. Well, that invariably doesn't work. That invariably creates a problem. I could see a person feeling like, maybe I'm not cut out for this, man. I'm thrown into this and I don't know what I'm doing.
Hey guys, Damian Stevens, host of MSP Mindset, founder and CEO of Servosity. Today, I continue my mission to interview 100 of the fastest growing and most interesting MSPs on the planet. Today, I am joined by Danny Perry. Now, how do you go from you and your partner starting your MSP to the top 500 MSP list in just 3 years? It's culture. I'm not talking about flowery language and vague references. He talks about how he hires differently and is able to get people from the service industry that other people probably overlook, and then empowers his team to grow like none other. If you want to learn the secrets to growing your MSP, don't miss out on our conversation today. Well, Danny, I'm really excited to get into this today.
Yeah.
You started in a pretty unconventional way. Tell me about how you even came to form what is now IT Cubed.
Well, thanks for having me, Damian, first of all. And
Absolutely.
really enjoy your show, your podcast, and the people that you've been able to bring to the table. It's very informative, and I'm honored to be here. So thank you. My journey to MSP, I would say, has been somewhat non-traditional. The backstory goes way back, and to a completely non-technical, just from a non-technical perspective. It was not my intention to be in IT at all. My goal was to teach history,
That's a big difference.
It's a huge difference. But during my studies at the University of Colorado, I ended up getting involved in urban planning and urban planning classes, and took an internship with this group called the Enterprise Foundation, now called Enterprise Community Development, out of Columbia, Maryland, with offices around the country. My role was in Denver, and I was assigned to this project called Asset-Based Community Development, and which is a theory coming out of Northwestern University at that time, McKnight, Kritzman, and which basically stated that distressed communities, wherever they are, in order to come up with a comprehensive community revitalization plan and effort that would work, you needed to take into account the assets that are already in place within a community, and then base your community development activities on those existing assets, then bringing in additional resources around that, whether they're federal, state, local, what have you. So my task with the Enterprise Foundation's office in Denver was to catalog the assets that were in place for a community revitalization plan there in the Five Points neighborhood of Denver. And a lot of folks who have been to Denver will probably now know this is Curtis Park North or the Rhino District. At that point, it was all 5 Points, Curtis Park, historically black community. Actually, you go back even further. Originally it was a lot of mansions that were built from people who made their fortunes in the gold rush, during the gold rush days of Colorado. They built these big, huge mansions right off the downtown area of Denver, and that's where they lived. Over time, a lot of those mansions became subdivided into apartments. And then further over time, as more African Americans moved into Denver defense industries based on really World War II, you saw a big influx. So the opportunities in this huge migration out of the South, it became a black community. It became the largest black community between really Kansas City and Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
So it was culturally prominent, meaning all of your great musicians, actors, shows, everything stopped there in this 5 Points neighborhood. So it has a lot of importance to the African American community. So from there, though, over time, it began to degrade based on, America, and and it became what was considered a distressed community. So looking at that was the basis for this is an area right off of downtown Denver. The property values obviously at some point are going to increase as you're increasing urban density and all of that stuff. So what is the plan? What kind of plan can be put in place to, one, enhance that growth, enhance that transformation, but two, not displace everyone who's already there? How do you create a comprehensive community revitalization plan that then allows for new growth, but doesn't provide for mass displacement at the same time?
Sure.
First step, catalog all the assets that are in place. So what are the civic institutions that were there, schools, churches, governmental facilities, police stations, fire stations, all of that sort of stuff. Then you look at community-based organizations. You look at the businesses that are within the area, basically everything. So in being assigned this and trying to figure out how to do this, I didn't know how to. I had really not the first clue. But so I stumbled on to GIS mapping. And basically self-taught myself, that's redundant, isn't it? Taught myself to use this program in order to create this color-coded map, plotted, gridded, categorized, that labeled all those assets in an easily visible format. And that was the basis for the community revitalization plan that ultimately came into shape. But before that map, now mind you, this is 1997. So that map, Damien, got so much attention. It was insane, from the internal to the foundation of people viewing this map, and it was paraded around the country and used in different publications and all of this stuff. And so the map became very famous, and as a result, I kind of gained some attention. The side effect was that at that time that I just became the tech guy inside of the foundation when I had really no intention of being that guy. But so that was the first step towards this journey towards MSP. So I became the tech guy inside of the Enterprise Foundation. And so I was assigned to basically this community technology centers initiative. So back in that time, the digital divide was a very prominent thing, and a lot of younger people don't really pay attention or know about that at this stage, because everyone's walking around with a massive supercomputer in their pocket. And so the connectivity and the access to the internet and all of those things that were really driving this divide then don't really exist now. And but during that time frame, access to technology was very, very, what's the word I want to use? It was basically haves and have-nots. And so the strategy was to build out what were called community technology centers, basically computer labs within community institutions, schools, churches, anywhere where we were allowed to build one. And so that became my focus, was securing the resources from both the financial and the technology perspective to build out these community centers, and then to help build the capacity of those organizations to support them over the term, so that more people had access to computers and the internet during that time frame.
For anybody that's kind of not old enough to realize, computers used to cost several $1,000 minimum. So it wasn't exactly something you would have access to. Hey guys, Damien here. As I continue to interview the top MSPs in the world, one thing has become incredibly clear. It's time that we let go. Even more than that, every time I focus on my zone of genius and get out of the way and do the very few things I'm good at and delegate to others, I'm ready for that next level of growth. So if you're ready for that next level of growth, one way that I could help you is with Servosity. We co-manage your backups and disaster recovery so you can focus on what you do best. Let us do the rest. And then what we do is we test the backups every single day so you never have to worry. If you'd like to learn more, click the link below.
And it was, and the lines were drawn economically, of course. The lines were, and so by definition, economically means by race at some point. The further down you drill, so you had real disparities between different communities in that regard. So there was you could say there was a social aspect to it, but it was based purely on the I think on the economics. My perspective. So that led to the establishment of a lot of community technology centers across the country, and that led to me drawing the attention of a group down here in Houston, Texas, where that had a focus, a very similar focus of building community technology centers with a slightly different model. And they were the goal of that organization was to take ex-corporate computers, refurbish those, and then rebuild, and then build the community technology centers from using those resources. And so that became my mission for the next couple of years. Learned a lot in that process, particularly in regard to refurbishing and the reuse of computers, recycling, all of those aspects of the industry crash course. And so we built a lot of computer labs. That's the nuts and bolts of it. And yeah. I was approached by this group called TechCore, who I worked with for a number of years, about a dozen years, and with the mission of now impacting education. How do you from this point get the pipeline of talent created? Kids, elementary, middle, high school, and what's the pathway to get into this technology industry, to learn, to understand it? And the analogy I always gave was, everyone knows how to operate their television set. So you grab the remote, you push the button, you navigate to the content you want, and it's there. But while everyone knows how to do that, there are not a lot of people who understand what are the processes, what are the technologies, what's all the magic going on behind the scenes that's bringing that specific content that you're interested in to your screen at that time that you want. So you could apply the same thing to web pages, computer programs on your device. So the goal was to impart that level of education, a deeper understanding of how technology works rather than how to work it. And so the methodology was via after-school programs that taught programming, computer use, things of that nature, working within, it was a school focus versus a community focus, which I had been involved in. And the one thing that I brought to that was the refurbishing piece that I spoke about earlier, and engaging high school students within refurbishing activities that allowed them to get the understanding, the skills that they needed in order to have a better understanding of technology and understand the career paths and maybe go forward within that field. And then from there, a lot of the computers that were refurbished, and not all by students, but a lot of the computers that were refurbished, we had secured contracts with the Houston Independent School District and the Dallas Independent School District to resell those computers with basically refurbish, warranty, deploy, and we were reselling those computers to those two school districts, and literally it was just a wave. It was literally thousands and thousands of those computers that were deployed within those districts. The rationale for that was, well, the refurbished cost less. So with the schools needing to bring more technology in, the refurbished machines cost less. And with the warranty attached, there was a lot less risk to buying refurbished machines. With it being part of this social enterprise, with a nonprofit organization with a social mission, but with an earned income aspect to how the business operates, it hit a number of social checkboxes as well, from a corporate standpoint, from a community, so with that, we basically were kind of busting at the seams on that side, very small staff, volunteers, all of that stuff. And an ex-employee of mine at TechCore introduced me to who's now my business partner. And the basically saying, I think you guys can do something together. His name is Chad Barron, and he was a bartender at that point. at Outback Steakhouse, and he had started. It was an interesting story. Maybe you want to talk to him, but he had started handing out business cards around the bar. His dad was a tech guy, and so he learned a lot of stuff by osmosis, but had studied computer science as well. And he started handing out business cards around his bar and about tech support. Hey, I can do tech support for you. I can fix your computer. And the strange thing was that he started getting not individual clients, but corporate clients. He started getting some small businesses that were in need of the services. So it was all break fix, block hours, that sort of stuff. He had, one guy and a bookkeeper at that point in time. And so we sat and talked, and I was able to, because I had a need for bodies really to assist with the refurbishing and the deployment of these devices into the school districts. That's how we met, from a contractual relationship along those lines. And that was 2012. Well, I think that was about the time you were getting rid of your MSP, I believe.
In all fairness, I didn't know it was an MSP till many years later. Somebody told me, and I was like, "That's what I've been doing." Okay.
Wow! If only I would have known.
Right.
But from that was 2012. A couple of years into that relationship, it was good. But the market had started to change. The price of new computers. You had alluded earlier that, hey, computers cost thousands of dollars back in the day. Well, those prices were dropping like a stone.
Yeah.
And so the value prop for refurb versus new was changing. And so I did the math, and I was like, okay, I've got maybe 3 years before this is no longer viable or as viable as it was. And so it's time to start thinking about what's next. So I sat down with my partner, my now partner, and just ask about what his vision was. Where do you want to go? What do you want to see? The goal was to build what he had into a bigger company. And the conversation led to, well, I'm pretty sure I can assist in some way with that, but, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a good employee, or are you looking for a partner? And he said a partner, and that was the genesis. So that was 2014. I was doing a little bit of, started working with them part-time on certain things. And I had a commitment that I had made to my daughter at that point in time, that I was going to finish this degree that I started at the University of Colorado 20-something years ago, because she was in high school at that point in time and questioning the value of everything and, kids. So I, after that conversation, I said I need basically 3 semesters to finish this degree. And so I enrolled at the University of Houston, finished that history degree, and that was in December of 2015. So January of 2016, we officially came together, and I took on the role of COO, and with the whole goal of putting the foundation under this thing in order for it to grow. One of the things that had to happen was a transition from block hours to MSP. And so that was the key first. Well, that was one of the first steps, but the first step was, let's put together an organizational structure. Let's put a foundation under it. Let's look at the tools we're using. Let's look at the what we're going to need to be successful within this, the roles of the types of people we're going to need, that sort of thing. Who we have already, again, assets. So let's look at the existing assets, and then we'll figure out where we need to go. So foundationally, that was the first step. And the second step was then that transition to MSP. And that took place in 2016. I think I have a lot of funny stories, or a lot of strange occurrences. Yeah. But we had attended a Tech Data, they called it Channel Link, I think back then. We attended one of their events, and all I heard was MSP, 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 during that. And that was the first time it really just pounded, like, what is this MSP thing and why it's everyone, it was a journey. Like, okay, let's get down to figuring out exactly what this is. So I sat in a session, and he concurrently had sat in a session with some ConnectWise folks. And so when this was in Dallas, we had drove up for that event. And on the way back, we're just comparing notes. And I'm talking about MSP, and he's talking about this PSA. And in that 4 hours in the car, we came up with the MSP plan. And that was, so by the time we got back that next day, it was in motion. We were trying to, coming up with the first MSA, for our service level agreement for MSPs, and taking the steps down the road towards the right PSA platform, and all of these things that came up as a result of that event, attending that event, which is another whole story. But and from there, we signed our first MSP client within, a month or so, and they were, kind of foundational within that side. And that was the start. So that was 2016. And later in that year, we decided to rebrand to IT Cubed, what is now IT Cubed. And so 2016, we have different dates as to the birthday of this company. Mine is 2016. His is a little bit earlier because he was doing the block hour stuff. But
yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, Dan. I want to come back to it. So one of them that jumped out at me though is, as a tech guy, as an MSP, former MSP, I tend to go, okay, more engineers means more capability to deliver, and more, if you position yourself as a sales guy, okay, more sales equals more revenue, which is growth. But I'm interested because, I don't know if it was just title, but COO. And until several interviews back, I interviewed John Ali, and she kind of opened my eyes that a COO is much more than just what I had really thought before of as kind of a call center that was inevitable once you hit a certain scale. And then I didn't ever really see it as this driver of change and profit and ability to scale. So I'm curious, kind of title COO, but what was your role and kind of what was your hand in helping IT Cubed grow?
Man, the COO role is all the work, none of the glory. So
that's why we don't hear about the COOs, right?
Never. So it's I think there are, and people are titled differently. There's if you're handling operations, if you're handling whatever aspect of the business, but there's always somebody who is I would say somebody who has to be the bedrock of what you're doing, so that everyone else can fly. So one of the things that we figured out really quickly in the partnership is that my partner is all gas, no brakes, and I
can relate to that.
Very very different. A vehicle needs a gas pedal and brakes in order to actually function. So in order to apply the right checks and balances to make sure that what we're doing makes sense, that it's vetted, that you are not just going off on a wild tangent, or you're taking anything that comes through the door, or if you're not foundationally set, if you don't have a strategy for the people that you need, a scaling up plan, if you don't have the services, the products and services that are necessary to get the job done, then you really are working against yourself in that regard. So my role really was that basically setting those foundational pieces, getting as fundamental as an HR plan, how we're managing payroll, how we're ultimately going to provide benefits to the people who work for us, all of those types of things, taxes, payroll, then the tool sets that were utilized within the organization. What's your HR plan or your hiring plan for people? How do you keep the bodies in? How do you, especially at a early stage where we couldn't go and pay for the highest priced engineers, and so we had to develop people, and a lot of the and still my role is developing the people, finding the right people that can fit within the environment, that have the mindset that really that they want to grow individually, personally, professionally, however you want to describe it. And that they've made the choice to be in this industry. And what that has led to, from our perspective, is we have a lot of people on our team who are former service industry folks, Damien. And what that means is what that practically means is that on one side, they're capable of interacting with people. So from a conversational level,
break that down for me a little bit, Danny. What you said, a lot of people that come from a service industry background,
correct.
Break that down and give me some example of what you mean by that.
Yeah, I mean like cooks, wait staff, bartenders, photographers, people who are dealing directly with the public and have to communicate in an effective manner. They have to provide a level of customer service that's a part of their everyday role. That's what they do. That's how they earn money. So that type of person, the communication skills that you're looking for, well, let me back up a little bit. From a technical perspective, there are some very talented people who have technical degrees that are from a 30,000 feet down to the ground. They can explain everything or can do a lot from a technology perspective. However, they have to interact with people in an MSP, especially in a small MSP. And that's where you find some difficulties. That's where you find a little bit of a disconnect with the skill set that you need versus the other skill set that you need in order to be successful if you're going to, maintain the customers that you have, provide the level of service that you want, and keep those agreements in place past the initial expiration. So that I've found that service industry people who are coming out of that industry, if they've made a conscious decision that they want to be in the technology space and are taking the steps necessary to be there, whether that's a baseline certification or doing their research to come, what can I do to get into the space, and then taking those steps to improve themselves and to really just to be able to take that next step, then that's the kind of person at that stage of the game for us. Those were the people that we needed. Those were absolutely the people that we needed, and those are the type of people that you could grow within your company. Based on certifications, based on skills and experience that they gain working with the customers, based on mentoring and all of that stuff. Those are the people that you can grow into the space, and that ultimately become very, very good employees within the MSP space.
I want to jump back on one point just because I want to give this the space it deserves. So you're title COO, but you're really putting a lot of the foundation. And I think if you're like me and you're listening and you're all gas and you're growing, you're doing these things, and maybe as a fellow MSP, sometimes you think if I just buy this tool, my problems are solved. But it sounds like as COO, you brought a level of operational maturity to the business. And maybe, finally somebody's job was to do something besides close tickets, to instill some operational maturity into the rest of the business. And when you're a few folks, you can probably you can probably get away without that. But once you get past a few people, that can become an issue. Did you guys kind of see that in your growth, where you realized you needed to kind of revisit operational maturity? Was it all up and to the right from a growth perspective?
It was all up and to the right from a growth perspective up until really the COVID year. But we did see that. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, it's like as you move forward, and as you gain clients, as you are dealing with more complex environments, as you're more complex people as well. What are the skill sets needed to, one, maintain that, and two, how do you actually, let me just back that up, not even maintain it. How do you manage that? How do you
let's start with just that.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that, as a smaller MSP, we're still a smaller MSP. So there's the old multiple hats thing that you have to juggle. However, you also have a real need to provide some degree of siloing of what people are doing, who's responsible for what, and then also having very, very well documented processes. I think that was one of the key things of, you have this. We have a guy who's been with us basically since day one, and a lot of stuff in his head. He knew, he basically could do a lot, can do a lot, and that's what ends up happening there is that person gets completely overburdened because of the fact that, hey, he knows how to do this, or he can figure it out. And now that one person is engaged in or involved in everything that you're doing in one way or the other from a technical perspective. And the burnout becomes real for them. And you end up dealing with things that are not necessarily that you necessarily want to deal with. I didn't want to deal with it, actually. And then, so now how do you silo that person? How do you get them to in the role that allows them to be most effective? And then also just not making the mistake of, and we made this mistake. He's our top guy, right? And so, hey, let's make him a manager of, we've got a couple other guys. He's now the manager. And then at that point, at that stage of his career, he wasn't ready for that. And that was a mistake. So, and then you hear it all the time. It's like your best tech is not necessarily going to be a good manager, because he's effective in this way doesn't make him mean that they're automatic, or her, that they're going to automatically be effective in another role, especially when it's dealing with people. Now, today he's our director of technical operations, but you had to afford the space for growth in order to realize the potential and allow the maturity to happen. Because everybody, our industry, it's a lot of young people, man, and while they're can be very smart, very capable, can do stuff. There's in today's world, we call it squirreling. It's like, wait, there's something bright over there, and while they are very capable, they're not exactly mature the moment you get them. They're not as mature as they're going to be. And I think you have to, if you're able to, provide space for them to, one, skill up, gain experience, and mature, then you ultimately end up with the type of people that you need. And I think that's kind of our story. And I'm not sure if I answered your direct question. There was something I was missing there. Other platforms, the tools that are needed. Documentation, I mentioned. So standard operating procedures, processes. So getting a documentation platform in place was very key. And even more so than that, establishing core values, what we're trying to achieve as a company, how we're trying to do business, how we're going to work. Then documenting those processes, not having to answer the same question twice, getting the right tools in place so that the techs could do the work that they needed to do. Changing the strategy. Everything was touch, 8-9 years ago, and now it's not exactly the same. It's more, if we don't have to touch it, or if we're we have a strategy called 70-20-10. We want to do 70% of the stuff that we do needs to be completely automated, with 20% remote and 10% on site max. And that's so getting to that without defined processes is impossible. Getting to that without a foundational, getting to that without a management level, who's responsible for what, and what's the escalation path up, impossible. So that is, I think I hope I answered your question from a platform perspective there, and how we've tried to utilize people, and how we, basically had to reinvent or had to reassess and reinvent continuously. It's continuous.
So, Danny, you've reached a spot that most MSPs aspire to, but haven't, which is ranked in the top 500. But even more unusually, you guys joined and started offering managed services in 2016, and you were first named on that list in 2019. So, what do you attribute to getting from started, you and your partner, from going from 2 people to named on the top 500 list in just 3 years?
Well, I got to give him credit. He was a sales making machine. He was a relational seller back then. So he's hitting the streets and making good personal connections with the people that we were looking to do business with and converting. And that led to a influx of business, obviously.
This is your business partner?
Yes. And I think I told you a little earlier, I'd listened to Jeff's the show the other day and how he had broke operations. Well, pretty much a similar thing happened where the number of folks coming in, the operations could not support that at the level that it needed to, and had to be restructured in order to better serve the clients that we were bringing in, and then also the types of clients, bigger companies. We were dealing with 20-person shops. Now we have 100 people or 200, and totally different type of environments, complexity, all of that sort of stuff. So I think I attribute a lot to his diligence on the sales side. That was the all gas, go for it, and then mine on the break side of, hey, wait, this is great, but we've got to structure ourselves so that we are able to support the business that you're bringing in. So that was I think that was the in a very broad way. That's what led to the initial growth. I think we were winging it a little bit, a little bit. So but then also making sure that on the HR side, on the finance side, on the the other aspects of the logistics side, for example, all of those things, making sure that there's a plan to handle those, and then that we've gone through several iterations of how we manage the help desk and how we manage projects. But initially it was the dispatch model, and we're a live help desk model at this point, which better suits what we're doing now. Having the people in play to manage that. I think another piece is that, and it sounds bad, but there are, well, maybe it doesn't sound bad if I rephrase this. I think that establishing the right culture is key. I think that making it a place to work that people want to come to work with, that we look at work-life balance, that we put the right benefit plan in place where with healthcare and paid time off, and it's election day today, so as we're filming this, so the paid time off to vote, things of that nature that we put in place where we're not a big enough company to do that, but those were things that we felt were important to do in order to establish the right type of workplace culture. everyone can speak. Everyone, there's no, the rigidity is not at the level of, if Danny said it, that's law or anything. Everyone has a voice here, and maintaining, actually intentionally striving for a diverse group of people that are working together within these walls that we have here, because that provides a level of differing opinions, mindsets, different ways of viewing a problem, getting to a solution, and understanding. It helps us understand each other here, but it also helps us understand the people that we're working with as well. So I find that very, very, very important to have to really intentionally strive for a diverse environment. And that doesn't mean that, people can take that any way that they're going to. However, I'm not turned off by a person's name or by where they're from or any of that sort of stuff. Who are they? What can they do? What can they bring to this environment? And then bringing that together as into a coherent whole in order to provide the services that we're providing. And I think I keep going off on tangents, Damien. Is that another tangent?
No, it's wonderful.
Rein me in, please.
No. It's really good. I'd like to go deeper there because I don't think we do enough of this as MSPs, and this is being intentional about diversity. And we've done that at Servosity. We could do better, but like in my own company, we've done that. And I know why we've done it, because I have some of the similar beliefs that it gives you different patterns of thought, different perspectives. But I'm curious, what is diversity to you and why? Because, there's the big companies that are forced to, and
right.
You're in a spot where you're doing it intentionally, which must mean there's an advantage. There's a reason.
It could be just me, in all honesty, but I think you think of the perspective of, or how a engineer who is, early 30s, single, no kids, how he approaches his work. He may go 24/7 and, just full on or however he goes about his work, but without the level of anything outside distractions, really, if you will, and by that from a family perspective or marriage or anything of that nature. How he approaches things is very different. Now take now flip that, and a woman of the same age who's married or unmarried with children, and the juggling act that all women really face, within the workforce or stay at home. Women just end up working harder. Let's just face that. And what's her perspective on the same task? Now, she may have to be much more efficient in how she does things. She may have to multitask as well in order to get the job done in a way and in a timely enough manner, so that she can pick up her kids at 3:30 or have dinner on the table at whatever time frame, or whatever the case may be. The same concerns that this guy doesn't even deal with. He's not even thinking about that, right? So by that, just those two different perspectives or those two different needs, creates a whole different methodology of getting stuff done. And that's just from a gender perspective. Now you can look at it from a cultural perspective of, Black, white, Hispanic, Middle Eastern, whatever the case may be. Everybody comes at these things from a different viewpoint. They're looking at it from different perspectives. There are different cultural influences. There are different things that they have to do, responsibilities that they have. All of those things, those varying perspectives are what adds value to any company. And I can't really understand why it's even an argument And not to go down into a political wormhole, because I know how deadly that can be.
Sure.
But I can't honestly see a reason not to. I think the business case for diversity writes itself.
Yeah. Yeah. How does that? I agree. And for anybody that, what's funny is as I listen to you, Danny, I think of this book that I was fortunate to hear the speaker, Franz Johansson, and the book is The Medici Effect. And it talks about the Renaissance that happened because of all the different artisans that were brought in, and that diversity led to unparalleled advances. And so that, you and I are maybe not the only people with that opinion. And, but as I listen to it, it's kind of interesting because it makes me wonder about the parallels between your views on that and your neighborhood revitalization. You know what I mean? If you think about it, they're both kind of a Medici effect. What I have also done that seems odd, except for when I speak to you, is we've typically invested in people that weren't the superstar tech, certainly didn't get the 4-year degree. They don't have 5 years experience in the field. So why do you bet on those people that, it's really easy when I'm being lazy to put out a job requirement that says I need a 4-year bachelor computer science and I need 5 years in the field and yada, yada, yada. And, maybe a little bit less, but obviously I'm applying a really big filter to who is going to apply. Now I'm, competing with everybody else. So I'm curious why you look in a broader way, and I do too. But I want to hear your thoughts.
I think that looking at it from that perspective, again, I can attach some metrics to it. If again, I told you the engineer I spoke about earlier, he's been here. He's a bartender, or he was a waiter, a server in a restaurant. 12 years later, he's director of technical operations here at IT Cubed through multiple iterations of what he's done. Our lead engineer.
That is an amazing story in of itself, and it's not the only one, but it's an amazing story for somebody in tech to be there that long. And then it's amazing for somebody, right, to be a waiter, and then just knowing what the kind of comp comes with the director of technical operations. That's an order of magnitude difference in quality of life and ability to deliver for your family. So
very much so, and he's 33 years old at this point in time. So during that time frame, think about that. My project team lead, he got married a couple of years ago. Now he's expecting his second child, but he was a baby. He's grown up here. He's been here for 7 years now, and came in as a Tier 1 tech, coming from basically a State Farm Insurance call center. It's a whole completely different industry, but here he is, and so 6 years later, he's still here. My help desk team lead, basically senior support engineer, he's in his 6th year with us, and he was doing, I don't know if you're probably old enough to remember the old Olin Mills photos and all of that stuff, photo shoots. But
yeah.
He was a photographer. That's what he did. That's what he did. So setting up cameras, doing that, taking those pictures of family pictures, graduation pictures, blah blah blah, that sort of stuff. 5 years later, or almost 6 years later now, he's running our help desk, and so again coming in as a Tier 1. So the thing I can say about all of those guys is they made a decision that they wanted to be in tech, and they took the initial steps. In this case, A+ certification. That's basic stuff, Yeah. And then took the initiative to reach out, or to, and that's the, I think that's just kind of the key, that one, for us, it's created long-term employees. So we've had turnover. Don't get me wrong. We've had people where you had to put out a description and you hire somebody and they're meeting this need that you're putting in. But that brings a different level of, that can bring either good or bad. Or good or not as good. I don't want to necessarily call it bad. And we have folks, a couple of folks here who came through that methodology as well, who are also long term. So I'm not saying either one way is right or wrong, but for us, the service industry folks have been the service industry folks who have made a decision to go into tech have been instrumental to what we do here, and then establishing the type of culture that they want to stay in. We're at we're not huge. We're not the smallest, but we're definitely not huge. So we can't pay the highest salaries in the industry. We can't pay we're not paying the lowest, but we're certainly not paying the highest. So how do you create a culture where they want to stay, where they feel valued, where they feel their voices are heard, and that there's a path for them, that as this company grows, they know they're not going to be abandoned for, some hotshot who comes in and, cleans house and we're doing all this. They've been able to grow in this industry. They've gone from the on-prem MSP some of them have gone from the break fix block hour world to MSP, from the all on-prem, all, local software, local email hosting, to this fully, pretty much everyone we deal with, every client we have is cloud-based. They've seen this transformation. They've seen the current transformation to security focus, security first. You have to secure the environment, secure the data. So what that now in turn means is not about knowing every nuance of how something works. That initial analogy that I gave at the very beginning here, and now it is about managing the services, managing the OEM, if you will, the knowing how to interact with their support, knowing how to basically manage these programs or these services that we all use in order to deliver the service that we provide to our clients. So those are multiple transitions that I've just listed there. These guys have been through it all, and they're adaptable enough to do so. And so creating an environment where you feel that your voice is heard. I believe I feel that, I think to a letter, our employees would say that their voices are heard within this company, and that they have a path. They know that as they move forward, as they skill up, as we get bigger, that we're not moving on from them. These are some of the, these are not everyone who gets you to a certain level makes it to the next level. Sure. We all know that. But the folks who are key individuals here, it's obvious they know who they are, and we know who they are, and we're doing what we can to make the environment amenable for them to be with us for as long as we're here.
That's really, really cool. I have so many more questions. One of them, though, is, I've talked to some folks and they're like, well, that works when you're not growing quickly. But here you are 3 years from offering managed services to on the top 500 list. You guys have continued to grow while maybe having ups and downs. You've continued to grow quickly. So how have you been able to get people that are starting off not very technical? Because I get a lot of feedback that that sounds cool, or I kind of buy into it, but I don't have the time. I have to go out to the market and get somebody that's already got a bunch of years experience, because I can't afford, is a lot of the pushback I hear, to wait for them to come up to speed if they don't just kind of hit the ground running. So how have you been able to balance your quick growth, but also, if you're in a lot of cases bringing on people from never mind managed services, but just not even being in technology?
Well, I think that that it is there are the peaks and valleys. There are the plateaus. We're on a plateau right now. Can I get off of this thing? But again, it comes down to, from my perspective, is that the processes, standard operating procedures, your scopes, your everything documentation within your system, your knowledge base, being able to access that information quickly, being able to, a lot of this at certain levels is, can you follow the script? Can you go from A to B all the way through to Z to your solution, rather than A to Z or A to Y? And, that didn't work. Well, yeah, because you didn't go to B first. And so being able to follow instructions. I mean, honestly, follow those the documentation that's provided. Lean on the escalations. Follow your processes. That's the key piece, because at your base level, most of that stuff is documented, and it's documented 100 times. There are not many issues. There are not a whole lot of issues that your lower level techs are going to face that the guys who have come before them and advanced up haven't already faced, and that they haven't seen within this particular client environment or across the client base, and that has not been documented in one way or the other. So the focusing on that, on the documentation, has been, I think that's really key. That you cannot deviate from that. You have to engage in that, and it has to be intentional, and changes have to be managed properly. Your permissions to actually make those changes have to be hierarchical in a way, so that there's a process. I need this change made because of this. Here's the rationale for making that change. That's now in the system. They go, and then it goes through an approval layer until the change is actually made, and then it's implemented into your documentation from that standpoint. So now it's not just people jumping into the system and, hey, this is what I did today, and this worked, and here's how we're going to do things from now on. It's well, wait a minute, that change hasn't been vetted. This may have worked in this situation. You may have got lucky for all we know, but if we can't go from A to B to C to D all the way down, and in a very well laid out, documented manner, that somebody else can come behind you and do the exact same thing, then it didn't really happen. If it's not in a ticket, you've heard that with every PSA ticket. Hey, if it's the PSA system, if it's not in a ticket, it didn't happen. And we live by that. So if someone calls and you just fix an issue, then there's kind of hell to pay around here for that. It's like, where's the ticket? Where's the, where's the documentation that this actually took place? And if it didn't, then that's a teachable moment. Yeah. And, a corrective moment at the same time.
Do you attribute your operational maturity to the ability to bring on and successfully bring on folks and have the ability to get them up to speed more quickly? In other words, hire service people that are not in IT, partially because you have enough operational maturity that they can absorb it without necessarily being, several years in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's going to depend on the role, of course. At the lower levels, its mindset and some degree of maturity that's necessary. And if there's a specific, there you go. There's English for you. There's a specific.
That be a secret sauce right there.
But if you have if you need a networking engineer, then of course you need a network engineer, right? Yeah. But from at a certain level, getting them in. Taking them through your training, understanding the systems, everything from HR and processes and just how the company works, what we're trying to achieve. But then, and making sure that that's a process that's not rushed, because especially you saw during the COVID years, anyway, if you can, hey, can you spell your name? Are you breathing today? You're hired. And so there was a lot of that there was some of that took place. We had some bad hires, and that were just honestly, from the start whether they're a culture fit here. From the absolute start whether this person is going to work out here or if we are buying time. And so in that regard, there was so much competition for folks during that time frame that we made a couple of mistakes. Mm-hmm. But for those who end up sticking around for any length of time, year, 2 years, 3 years, I consider if you have folks for over 2 years, I consider those folks long term. And in today's industry, and beyond that, it's just almost like, wow, what are you doing? Yeah. But making sure that they're trained in your systems, that they are trained in your processes, your way of doing business, and not deviating from that. Not, okay, well, we bought this guy in, he's 3 days into his training, but man, this project is off the rails right now, or this client is so we've got to just throw him into the mix. Well, that invariably doesn't work. That invariably creates problems. The idea from a good quality of work perspective, from a the person themselves now feeling that, I could see a person feeling like, maybe I'm not cut out for this, man. I'm thrown into this and I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know how I'm going to get there. So by taking those shortcuts, by going from A to Z on our processes, has the same effect as a tech just jumping from A to Z on a ticket if you don't go B all the way through. So maintaining that level of discipline to take them all the way through their training, to take them through everything that we want, and then to shadow the people who are here before you throw them into the fire, throw them into the wolves to do the job. That's worked for us. So I think that, I'm not really sure I can add much more to that.
Yeah, let me ask one other, which is, we've been through this, we've had to figure out a path, but then the other feedback when some people, I'm talking about this and they say, well, I do want to do that. And as soon as they remove some of these requirements from their job description, like 4-year degree or, X years experience in the industry, then you do get, what I found, you go from tens of applicants to hundreds because you get a lot of, you get a lot of waitresses and cooks and all that kind of thing. But in there could be the waitress or waiter that you need to hire. And so I'm curious, like, how do you deal with that? Like, a lot of people, they just give up because there's just like this volume. And then if you're not using something arbitrary, like 4-year degree in a certain field or X years experience, then you're going to get a higher volume of people. And I found most people struggle to kind of figure out who do we invite to the first or second level of our interviewing process when we have now a funnel of, when we've gone from tens to hundreds.
Right.
So I'm curious, like, how did you experience that, and how did you deal with that if you did?
Yeah, I would say that we did. And I think that that's, in a way, it's kind of platform based, so if you're hiring on Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever the case may be. But where we found that was ZipRecruiter. And I'm not to throw a vendor out there like that, but once you put together a description of what you're looking for and, or, basically pie in the sky kind of what you're looking for, and then seeing who comes through the door, that platform would open it up so wide and pull in so many applicants from all the other services, not necessarily anyone who's signed up with them, but they're just aggregating everyone's stuff and flooding you with it. And, so you the moment you turn it on, you have 200 applicants, and it's like, and most of them you're not going to pay attention to. So limiting it very much to Indeed is what I do nowadays. So that platform where you put out a very specific description that conveys that, hey, we're looking for this. However, this may be acceptable, or so those, I can't break down the exact wording, but that's the gist of it. That if you have experience in in a field, and if you have some base level of knowledge on the technical side, I'm really looking for those who are expressing an interest in moving into the technology field, or that have some bare level, some level of experience on that side, and that are, wanting to go further. And that's what's been effective. The super wide net doesn't really, that just creates a lot of work for me. That creates a ton of work for me, because you have to read through, you have to review them all, you have to, rate them, you have to now go through, and you have some bad interviews and things of that nature. And, but a lot of people, as well, they self-select, if you will. They self-select themselves for deletion, meaning, if you have a very, we usually will ask for, a couple of written questions, very, very simple stuff, and then spoken answers to, video or audio, but prefer video. Answer this question, answer these two questions. And if you can't do that, then you've basically said, I don't really want to do this. There was actually a time where I was like, I don't do video. And it's like, okay. And he kept coming at me. I don't do video, but I still want to interview for your company. It's like, well, I've asked you to do like literally one thing, in order to start this process. Submit your resume, of course, but answer these the written questions and 30-second video.
Yeah.
Well, if you can't do that, then you're creating I look at that as you're kind of a problem waiting to happen that I'm inviting in the door, and I don't want to invite you in the door. No,
one rotten apple can ruin your culture, and in this day and age, you're going to meet your customer more on Zoom or Teams,
right,
than you probably will in person.
Indeed.
So I could totally see why video is a very fundamental and not too high of an ask. I want to switch gears for a moment, Danny.
Sure.
Tell me about your biggest lesson learned over all the years in business.
All of the years and everything that I've done, all of these years. I think a couple of things. One, and we've already alluded to it. I think that from where I sit, culture really matters a lot. It's that may be the single biggest thing of creating the right culture around you and your team and your organization. I think for MSPs, people just getting started, or business in general, people are just getting started, or at whatever stage, if you haven't done this, is understanding your numbers, man, from a financial perspective, from a KPI perspective, what you're trying to achieve, what your goals are, all of that. I think that's critical, and that's a lesson I came to a little bit late from a business owner perspective. Hey, the money's coming in, bills are paid, we've got money in the bank, blah blah blah. But top line, bottom line, what are your actual costs? What's your profitability for full time? Whatever metrics that you're aligning yourself to. I think you need to know that. And I think the earlier you understand that, the better off you're going to be, because I really don't know if I need to add more to that. But I think knowing your numbers, what you're trying to achieve, and then what you're driving your people towards. What are their goals? How are you measuring them? how are you gauging whether they're successful in what they do versus not as successful or not as successful as you want? So I think those would be my biggest lessons learned so far. Yeah, those are. Yeah, I would say so. It's funny. I was refurbishing back in the day with my prior companies, and that's how me and my partner came together. And just going back in history, my father in East Texas, he worked for the city of Clarksville, but he also did what you call him a trash man, but it wasn't quite that. That area was not serviced by trash companies or anything. So on the, Friday, Saturdays, Sundays, he had a route where throughout that whole region, he would collect trash and deliver it to the dumps, city dumps. But from that, he would also pull out aluminum cans and metals and stuff like that. And so there's a ton of recycling that he was doing way back then. So it was, I was talking to my mom, rest her soul, she passed away in 2008. And, I was telling her about my work with the previous company, where a lot of refurbishing was going on, where I was collecting old corporate stuff and, refurbishing and putting it back out there for reuse in the community. And she sat and she thought about it for a second. She said, "You're just like your dad, a trash man." And I said, "Well, you know what? I never thought about it like that." But he was running a small business. I never really gave that acknowledgement. Up until years later, that he was doing that so many years ago in an area that was, that was not really amenable to a black man doing what he was doing, and he made a really good living for us, comparatively speaking, for everyone else around us, and. But she said that, and it just put things totally in perspective for me, and so I just embraced that trash man thing now.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that anytime you will do something that somebody else doesn't want to, there's could be a really great opportunity, and it's always risk to be an entrepreneur, but to take the risk, at that time where, like you said, it wasn't as favorable. To be who he was, to do that and be an entrepreneur is just admirable.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that is really cool to hear. What's one thing you wish you could do over, or if you could do over, you would in your history?
Oh, again, I would take a greater financial interest in everything. That would be one thing that I would definitely do over. One other thing, I would have jumped into the MSP space a lot sooner as well. If, again, not really understanding the models that were being presented until much later, until 2014, 15, what these things actually were. I wish I would have understood that a few years earlier, and because it would have been I would have made some very different decisions on when I actually moved into this space and when I made the change that I did. So I'm not sure if that's the biggest thing of all, but those are some things that's just right off my head that I can think of.
What's a myth about running an MSP that you'd like to dispel?
I think there are quite a few that you're going to lose control of your IT environment. It's going to cost more. All of those things, and I think all of those you can disprove all of that stuff very, very easily. You can create any kind of analysis that shows here's where you're going to save versus what you're going to spend on an internal IT from an internal IT perspective. However, in some cases, it might be better for you to have internal IT depending on your company. It always works for us from a co-managed perspective to have somebody there that can be the voice of the company to the MSP, and then through, well, we have the right person assigned to be the voice of the MSP into the company, and if you create that synergy, then it can definitely work. But I think that the biggest are, hey, it's going to cost you more, or you're going to lose control of your environment, or you're going to get locked into using some very specific products that you might not necessarily want to use, things of that nature. And I believe that all of those are, maybe in the case of some MSPs that's true, but I think it's really a case by case, company by company scenario, and all of which can be dispelled relatively easy. But looking at the MSP itself, the industry itself, and looking at every industry itself, the reality is, and we have this. I would always say this to our clients, and now I'm starting to hear it come out of the mouths of my team, and I like it. But it's that every company, no matter what industry you're in, every one of us are a technology company, and we're all 100% dependent on the tech that we're using to either run our internal processes, the line of business applications that you use, the communications platforms, how everything, the security, your data, how you go down the line. Everything that every business does touches technology, or technology touches in some way, shape, or form now. And that if there's a disruption to internet service, your phones are out, you can't access your data, you can't communicate with your clients, you can't run your line of business application, you can't run receipts, you can't push pay orders, you can't do anything. And that's almost every company in the country nowadays. So we're all technology companies. We're all technology companies. That level of understanding is, I think it's key. I think it needs to be stressed by more of us MSPs, that we're a tech company. Obviously, we support technology, but you're 100% dependent on it, that your business won't run without this. And think of what happens if you get breached, data, ransomware, anything, downtime, outages, all of that. So focusing on it from that perspective, looking at it as foundational to the running of every business, and not as a cost, just, and this is money out the door. This is something that we're paying for. I don't know why. What's the value? Let me whittle this down to whatever. But more looking at it from, here's how my business runs. Here's the underlying technology that supports it. Here's what these are the crucial aspects of what we need in order to be successful from both a business perspective and a technology perspective, and looking at it as a I won't necessarily say a profit center, but as a cost of doing business that can be maximized if you apply the right tools, technology, and partners. So I think that's the nature of the world we live in nowadays, and MSPs are kind of crucial to that. I would, I'll go back to COVID. MSPs saved the world.
Yeah.
So, literally saved the world, saved the economy, saved the 100%. We were so busy. And we came, it's funny, my wife and I went to India in February of 2020. And we came back in the country on February the 21st, and everything started shutting down, like within days of our return. And then every client we had to transition them to work from home over this 10-day span. And that's not a unique story. That's almost every MSP you will talk to. We all did it. And business kept running. The country kept running. It shifted from a in-person at the office every day to a remote work from home scenario pretty much overnight. And that was because MSPs existed and already had the tool sets in place to make this transition possible. And, you go in and you're like, well, you don't have to buy anything else. We already have this. But, there are going to be some project costs or whatever. But think about that. You think about how insane that was, how absolutely devastating that could have been,
mm-hmm.
versus what actually happened.
Yeah. Night and day difference. Yeah. Given all that has happened, but all that is going on, Danny, what's something that you're looking forward to?
Well, I think I said earlier that we're recording this on Election Day, so I'm really looking forward to the election being over. That
I don't think you're alone in that.
That's my immediate hope, or a thing that I'm looking forward to. Just definitely looking forward to, family and continued health and wellness for my family and friends, and finding a awesome place to spend some downtime in 2025. But by and large, for 2020, I'm really looking forward to 2025 with the possibility that every new year brings, and that with we're currently going through some organizational planning internally on how we enter 2025. This is again for us has been a plateau year, as I alluded to earlier, and so what's the next step to go beyond that and to get to that next level. So the new years always bring new possibilities, the changes to new additions to a couple of new additions to the team, but new voices in new spaces, and then just rolling into 2025 with that vision, and seeing where we end up at the end of the year. But I'm very excited by the possibilities, and and like I said, hopefully find somewhere cool to vacation at some point in the year.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. If there was one book you would recommend to another MSP owner, what would that be?
Wow, I think I'm a history guy, so from a business perspective, I think for at any stage, Simple Numbers is a great book that especially folks who are just getting started. Simple Numbers. Why am I?
Greg Crabtree?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's one that for basic understanding of what you're trying to do, I would recommend that. From a historical perspective, you want to learn something you haven't learned or you haven't known before, read The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, which talks about that great migration that we referenced earlier. Open your eyes to different things, and the challenges, struggles, but also the indomitable spirit of people here in America. And so that's non-technical. That's all historical American story. And those are my books. Those are my choices.
I love this.
Yeah.
So normally I tell people how to find you, Danny, that want to, and I want you to do that, but also tell them about your media empire here, right? Because besides the AI newsletter, you have, I think, 3 other forms of media going out. So that's really unusual and really cool. So tell them about all the things you've got going on. Definitely.
We have, you can find me on LinkedIn, Danny A. Perry. And it's this cool little, I'll either be Johnny Appleseed or I'll be Danny Perry. There you go. Well, never mind. It came in backwards. So never mind that. But Danny A. Perry on LinkedIn, and ITCube is there as well. We put out a number of media properties. Primarily, you'll see them all posted on LinkedIn. We do the AI newsletter that comes out every Monday. We do and basically that's an aggregation of all the latest news in AI from week to week. New products, new services, who's doing what, anything along those levels. And we usually attached to a pretty good theme. So Halloween was the last week, obviously. So it was a spooky theme, and so that is the AI newsletter. And from on Tuesdays, we push out our what we call demystifying IT jargon, and that's all of these concepts and terms that you or your customers are hearing on a regular basis that they may or may not know what that terminology means. So we break it down. And so an example, insourcing versus outsourcing, or anything, any technical term that you can that you could come up with. We've probably done an episode on it at one point or another. We have technology tips and tricks where we work. Our technicians have to get out of their comfort zone and come here in front of the camera and
Nice.
break down the little tips and tricks that they use within their job, or that you may find helpful from Windows 11 to Office 365 or whatever, Microsoft 365 or whatever the case may be. Little tips and tricks videos. They're usually about 2 minutes long, and there's a library of those. All of those are on YouTube and LinkedIn. Then we do one of my techs, Kai Peterson, and I do the Dynamo Dynamics. We are huge soccer fans, so we basically intersect the global game of football with our IT jobs, our roles within IT, and we really focus on the Houston Dynamo as we have a partnership with them. But we talk about the global game, and then how technology and football are similar in a lot of ways, and we always bring those things back together. So that's really not very much technical talk. That's really fan passion. That's something that we can blow a little bit of steam off and engage with other folks who maybe you don't want to talk about tech all the time. I will say as well, on Thursdays we look at technology pioneers. We put out a post on basically the architects, people who have done something within the technology space that has impacted all of our worlds today. So that's the historical look back. So I said 4 properties, though. Those are the 5 that we do. So that's a Monday through Friday regular cadence of video postings that we do primarily here. People can find them on LinkedIn. If you go to my page or at Danny A. Perry or the IT Cubed LinkedIn page, you'll find all of those properties, and hit link, subscribe.
That's
I think that's
awesome.
what I was supposed to say.
That's so funny. That is really cool, Danny. Super unusual, super impressive that you're able to execute all of that. And I would love to take the rest of the day, continue asking you questions, but I won't. Thank you so much for being on MSP Mindset. This has just been a gift to me.
Oh man, thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. And God, this time has flown by. That was like an hour and a half. Oh, okay. But here we are. It's like, I could go on and on as well. I very much enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with you. And definitely, if you ever want to come talk some soccer or anything like that, the door is open. We can talk anything on our side as well. So thank you, Damian. I appreciate the opportunity.